My brother's girlfriend came to our family vacation alone this year. She said he just needed space. I believed her, until I found the burner phone hidden in my brother's drawer with a text that said, "Don't let her find out what we buried." Before we begin, please like, subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Let's all be internet friends. He was always the first to arrive. Every year, like clockwork. While the rest of us scrambled through city traffic and fought over whose car was more packed, Mason was already there, chopping firewood, fridge half-stocked, porch swept. He'd greet us with a beer in hand and that smug grin like he was doing the family some grand favor just by being early. But this year, when I pulled up the gravel driveway, the cabin was quiet. No truck, no music, no Mason. Just Leela. She stood on the porch with her hands tucked into the sleeves of Mason's old hoodie, the navy one with the worn elbows and fraying cuffs. She waved once. No smile. Just a slow, tired wave like she wasn't sure if I'd wave back. I got out of the car and looked past her, hoping maybe he was inside. Maybe running to town, maybe just napping, but the silence hit wrong. The kind of quiet that makes your ears ring. "Where's Mace?" I asked, grabbing my bag from the trunk. She pulled her sleeves up. "He couldn't make it." I stopped. "He's not coming at all." Leela shifted her weight. "He needed space. Just some time to think." I blinked. Since when does Mason skip family retreat week? He once showed up with a 102 fever and still made chili. She offered a smile, then brittle, half-hearted. I told him he didn't have to come. He's been overwhelmed, you know how he gets. I didn't actually. Mason didn't get overwhelmed. He got restless. He took long drives, spent too much money on hobbies he'd drop in a month. But he didn't disappear. Does Mom know? Leela nodded. I called her, told her not to worry. I followed her inside. The place looked the same as always. Wooden walls, plaid blankets. That stupid ceramic mousse lamp Mason once dared me to steal from a thrift store. But everything felt staged. Like someone tried to set the scene but missed something vital, the sound maybe, the presence. I dropped my bag near the couch and glanced around. Did he say why? She didn't answer right away, just stared at the fireplace where the logs were stacked but untouched. He just said he needed a break. I nodded slowly. From us. From her or from something else? She said they were on a break. The words came out like something she'd practiced. Polished. Set to the right pitch, sad but understanding, heavy but noble. I heard it at breakfast the next morning when Mom asked where Mason was between bites of cantaloupe and burnt toast. Leela didn't hesitate. He needed to be alone this week. Said he was sorting things out. She buttered her toast like it didn't sting to say that out loud. Mom blinked. Sorting what out? Leela gave a soft smile. Just life stuff, we've been off lately. Ezra glanced up from his coffee. Wait. Did you guys break up? Leela shrugged. Sort of, not really, more like a pause. A break, I repeated. Yeah. But you still came. Leela nodded. He didn't want me to miss it, said the family trip mattered. That it's tradition. That sounded like Mason. He was all about tradition. Movie night rotation. Matching pajamas at Christmas. Always the first to bring out the board games, always the last to pack up. So maybe, I thought, maybe he sent her in his place. Maybe he didn't want Mom worrying. Maybe they really were just figuring things out. But it felt thin. Something about the way she said he didn't want to ruin the tradition didn't land right. Mom was already pouring more coffee. No one pressed further. Not yet. We just let it hang there in the awkward silence between syrup and small talk. That night, I went for a walk down by the lake. Same loop Mason, and I used to take every year. The long trail behind the boathouse that led through the woods and curved around past the clearing, where we used to sneak beers and light sparklers when we were teenagers. Leela followed uninvited. I can't sleep, she said, catching up. Too quiet here. I shrugged. That's kind of the point. She laughed, I guess. We walked in silence for a bit. The air smelled like damp pine and leftover rain. Then she asked, Did Mason say anything to you before this week? No, why? She paused, kicked a pine cone off the trail. Just wondering if he mentioned anything. You two talk a lot, right? I narrowed my eyes. Yeah. Every few days. She nodded like that confirmed something. Then she changed the subject, asked about work, the drive up, if the old canoe was still leakier on the left side. I answered. But I kept my eyes on her the whole time. because something about her questions didn't feel like curiosity. They felt like inventory. Something felt off. It started small, the kind of details you don't notice unless you're looking, and I wasn't not at first. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe Mason had taken a week to himself to think, to cool off, and that Leela was just trying to hold space for him. But by the second day, the cracks started showing. Her suitcase was too light, not just in weight, in content. No makeup bag, no books, no chargers, no random purse clutter. Just a few neatly folded outfits, a toothbrush in its plastic cover, and a sweater of Mason's she wore to bed. I saw it when she left the guest room door open while brushing her teeth. Her suitcase sat wide open on the bench, like it didn't matter if someone saw inside. And the way she moved through the cabin, always cautious, like she didn't want to disturb anything. She didn't settle into her seat at the dining table. Didn't leave her flip-flops by the door like we all did. She never let her phone out of her sight, either. Not once. Always face down, always on silent. I caught her standing in Mason's room late that night, door barely cracked. She wasn't doing anything, just standing there, staring at the dresser. When I walked by, she startled. "Couldn't sleep," she said quickly. "Just thinking." I didn't ask what about. The next morning, she offered to help with breakfast, made eggs without asking how anyone liked them, didn't eat a bite, just kept glancing toward the hallway every time someone passed. I texted Mason again, just a simple, "Hey, you good?" No reply, then again later, "Mace, seriously, call me." Still nothing. I asked Leela if she'd heard from him. She smiled too quickly. "He's unplugging," she said. "It's healthy. You know he hates being on his phone when he's anxious." That part was true. Mason hated being reachable when his brain was spiraling. He used to shut everything off and go on solo hikes. No service, no timeline, no warning. But even then, he always called me after. Always. He didn't text me all week. Not once. That had never happened before. Mason and I weren't the kind of siblings who talked every day, but we had a rhythm, check-ins, shared memes, dumb updates. Even during fights with our parents or bad breakups, he always kept that thread alive. I scrolled back through our last messages. 3 weeks ago, send me that playlist you made, the one with the trashy road trip songs. Mason, on it, prepare to be disgusted. Me already ammed. And then nothing, no response to my texts this week. No answer when I called, it didn't even ring. Straight to voicemail like the phone was dead or off. I showed Leela at lunch. Held the phone out and said, "This is weird, right?" She barely glanced. He turns it off when he needs space, you know that. But he always checks it eventually, even on those trail weekends. He always texts me back. She stabbed at her salad with more force than necessary. "You're spiraling." I'm asking. "He's fine, Riley. He just doesn't want to be reached." She was so confident, so final about it. But something in her tone wobbled, like she'd repeated it to herself too many times already. Like she was trying to convince both of us. I backed off. Let it go. Until later that afternoon, when I saw her walking by the woodshed, phone pressed tight to her ear. Her voice was low, urgent. I only caught one phrase as I stepped outside. "No, she hasn't figured it out yet." She saw me, ended the call immediately. "Work," she said quickly. "They've been hounding me." I nodded slowly, didn't press. That night, Mom made Mason's favorite roasted chicken, mashed potatoes with too much garlic, and green beans with that dumb lemon zest trick he always insisted on. It felt like an offering, an unspoken invitation for him to walk through the door and act like nothing was wrong. He didn't, but Leela cried. Mom set the dish down like it was sacred. She'd gone all in, mashed the potatoes by hand, used the real butter, even dug out the pepper grinder Mason gave her last Christmas because he couldn't stand that plastic crap. She lit candles, turned off the TV, told Ezra to put his phone away twice. We all sat around the table like a family trying to act normal, like the absence wasn't screaming across the wood. Then I saw Leela, sitting to my left, twisting her fork in slow circles through the mashed potatoes. Not eating, just moving them around. Her eyes were glassy. "You okay?" I asked under my breath. She didn't answer, just kept her head down. Then, quietly, one tear rolled down her cheek. I leaned in. "Leela." She sniffed, wiped her face fast. "It's nothing, sorry." Mom reached across with that maternal, half-panicked instinct. Sweetheart, what is it? Leela shook her head. It's just been a long week, that's all. Ezra looked up. You sure? I said I'm fine. Her voice cracked on the word fine. She dropped her fork and pushed back from the table. I just need a second. She walked out onto the porch, shut the screen door behind her. We sat in silence. Mom looked at me confused. I didn't mean to upset her, it's just Mason loves that dish. Yeah, I muttered, he does. I stared at Leela through the window. She was sitting on the porch bench, shoulders hunched, hands in her lap like she was holding something too heavy to drop. I excused myself and followed her out after a few minutes. She didn't look at me, just whispered, I shouldn't have come. Why did you? She swallowed hard. I thought it'd be easier, pretending nothing's wrong. I sat beside her. You mean the breakup? She didn't answer, just wiped her face again. That's when the first gust of wind hit, sharp and sudden, dragging a thick bank of clouds behind it. The trees started hissing. Lightning flickered behind the mountains. I checked my phone, storm warning. Power's gonna go, I muttered. Leela nodded like she already knew. The power went out that night, right after 10. No warning flicker, no slow dim, just a full-body blackout like the cabin had been unplugged from the world. The living room went dark mid-sentence. Mom let out a small yelp. Ezra dropped a glass somewhere near the kitchen. I heard Leela whisper something sharp under her breath. I grabbed my phone and used the flashlight. Everyone else followed suit. Mom lit a candle. Ezra found the old lantern from the coat closet. We laughed it off, kind of, pretended it was charming. Rustic. Another chapter in the cabin stories we'd tell at Christmas. But I was sweating, not from heat. From something I couldn't name yet. I offered to check the fuse box. Not because I'm an electrician, because I needed to move. Needed an excuse to look. Something about the dark made me feel like the walls were hiding things. I passed Mason's room on the way to the breaker panel. Stopped just outside the door. It was empty. Of course. He wasn't here. But the door was open, the bed half-made, and the air inside smelled faintly like cedar and his old cologne. Like he'd just stepped out, I aimed my phone light toward the dresser. The top drawer was closed, but something about it felt placed, like a prop. I opened it, inside, socks, rolled perfectly, not a pair out of place. But underneath one of them, wedged toward the back, I spotted a small metal edge. A box, plain, black, locked with a cheap clasp, the kind you'd find on a diary or a jewelry case. Not fancy, not secure, but hidden well. I pulled it out and opened it. Inside was a flip phone. The kind no one uses anymore. The kind that doesn't sync, doesn't track, doesn't leave a clean trail. It was on. Battery low but not dead, no lock screen, no password. Just an open menu, one contact saved. I tapped into the message thread. Most were one-liners, vague, got it, don't wait, you know where. But then I saw the one that made my stomach drop straight through the floor. Don't let her find out what we buried. The contact was saved as Dad. At first, I didn't think twice. My heart was still hammering too loud from reading the message. My skin felt electric, like the kind of fear you don't recognize until it's already behind your eyes. But then the wording sank in. Don't let her find out what we buried, not what I buried. We. And the sender, Dad, that's what made my blood run cold. Because that number didn't belong to our father. I checked the contact details. No photo, no email attached. Just a number I didn't recognize, local area code, last 4 digits unfamiliar. I backed out of the message and flipped open my actual phone, pulled up Dad's contact, and compared them side by side. Not a match. Not even close. So whoever was sending those messages, it wasn't him. Or if it was, he'd gone through a hell of a lot of effort to hide it. The rain outside picked up. The storm had settled in now, hissing against the windows, wind pressing hard against the sides of the cabin like it wanted in. I stepped into the hallway and glanced toward the den, where Dad and Ezra were setting up candles. Leela sat on the couch with a blanket pulled tight around her shoulders, phone in her hand, thumbs motionless on the screen. I turned back into Mason's room and closed the door behind me. I stared at the phone, then at the message again. Don't let her find out what we buried. Who was her, me? And what the hell had they buried? I opened the call log. Just 4 outgoing calls. 2 to that same Dad number. 1 to an unknown number in a different state. 1 more to a contact listed only as E. My stomach flipped. Ezra, I checked the inbox again. No names, just that single thread. I stepped out of the room, holding the phone close, and crossed the hallway into my parents' bedroom, where Dad's phone sat charging on the nightstand. I opened it and scrolled through his recent calls, his texts, even his notes. The number didn't show up anywhere, not in his call history, not in his messages, not in his contacts. Whoever saved that number under Dad wanted it to look familiar. Safe, hidden in plain sight, but it wasn't our father, and that meant someone in the cabin was pretending to be someone else. I confronted Leela. I didn't plan it. Didn't rehearse it in my head. I just walked out into the living room with the flip phone clenched in my hand like it might self-destruct if I let go. She was still on the couch, curled up like a kid on a long flight, blanket tucked under her chin, knees pulled in, eyes fixed on some vague middle distance like she was watching something no one else could see. I stood in front of her and dropped the phone on the coffee table. It landed with a soft thud, flipped shut. Her eyes flicked to it, then to me. "Where did you get that?" she asked. I didn't answer. Instead, I stepped closer. It was in Mason's room. Hidden, still on. She didn't move, just stared at it, like it might bite. I opened it, pressed a few buttons. The screen glowed blue in the dark. I read the message aloud. "Don't let her find out what we buried." Her face drained. I saw it just for a flash, that electric jolt of fear before she shoved it back down. "I don't know what that is," she said. Her voice was thin, controlled, but her hands were clenched under the blanket. "Then why are you pale as hell right now?" I asked. She looked away. "You're scaring me, Riley." "Good, because I'm scared too." She stood suddenly, letting the blanket fall. "I swear, I don't know where that phone came from." "Then say his name." "What?" "Say where Mason is." She froze. "Because you keep saying he needed space, that he's unplugging, but no one's heard from him. No one's seen him, not work, not me, not anyone." She started to shake her head. "You don't understand. It's not what you think." "Then explain it." "I can't." "Why not?" "Because if I do," her voice caught. She looked past me toward the dark hallway. "You don't know what you're asking for." I stared at her. "What did you bury, Leela?" She backed away. I picked up the phone again, showed her the contact. "It's saved under Dad. That's not his number. Someone's pretending to be him. Is it you?" "No," her voice cracked. "Is it Ezra?" She didn't answer. That was all I needed. I called his work. It was the next morning. I waited until everyone had gone off to their own corners of the cabin, Dad on the porch with his paper, Ezra refilling the generator, Leela somewhere in the back pretending to read. I took my phone to the car, locked the doors, and called the HR line for Mason's office. The woman who answered had a clipped tone, polite but firm. I gave her my name, told her I was Mason's sister, and said I was just trying to confirm something about his leave. "Hold please," she said. A click, some classical hold music. Then a new voice came on. "Hi, this is Rhonda from HR. You said you're Mason Reed's sister." "Yes, Riley. I see here he's listed on family emergency leave. Is something wrong?" I hesitated. "I'm trying to figure that out." She didn't respond right away. "Can I ask when he started his leave?" 2 weeks ago, he sent an email. We never heard from him again." I sat up straighter. "He sent it." "You didn't speak to him?" "No, just the email." "Was it from his company address?" Another pause. "It came from an address we've seen him use before, but I'll be honest, it wasn't a typical request. No doctor's note, no follow-up. Just a message that said he was handling a private family matter. Can you send me a copy? I'm not allowed to share employee communications." I nodded slowly. "Right, of course. But off the record," she added. The tone didn't sound like him. I clenched the steering wheel. "When was the last time someone at the company actually spoke to Mason?" Heard his voice. 3 Fridays ago, she said. "He missed a big planning meeting. That's when the email came in. We haven't heard from him since." I thanked her, hung up. Then I sat there in the car, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing anchoring me. Mason hadn't told them anything. Someone else had. And it wasn't just that he hadn't shown up. It was that no one, not at work, not here, could actually prove they'd seen him in nearly 3 weeks. I walked back inside, straight to his room. It was exactly how he would have left it if he'd never planned on staying. Folded shirts, still creased like they'd come from a suitcase, one pair of jeans, a jacket draped over the chair, but no socks in the hamper, no toothbrush. No charger, no cologne bottle or deodorant or shoes under the bed. Nothing lived in. It looked like someone had staged it to feel full. But it wasn't. It was hollow. The phone pinged again. I was still in Mason's room, staring at the two perfect folds in his clothes, the fake lived-in mess that didn't fool me anymore. The flip phone was in my hoodie pocket, and I felt it buzz like a pulse. One new message. I pulled it out, flipped it open with a snap. She's asking questions, shut it down. The timestamp made my throat tighten. 10 minutes ago, which meant it wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't some delayed message or scheduled ping. It was real time. Someone here knew I had the phone, and they were watching. I didn't move for a second. Just stood there with the flip phone in one hand and my own phone in the other, heart slamming against my ribs like it wanted out. I backed out of the message thread and checked the signal. Full bars. Meaning whoever sent that text, they were close, inside the cabin or just outside it. I went cold. I stepped out of the room, slow and quiet, and glanced down the hall. Leela was gone, so was Ezra. I walked to the kitchen, tried to look normal, poured myself a glass of water with shaky hands. My mom was on the porch, flipping through a crossword, glasses low on her nose. She didn't look up. I opened the flip phone again and scrolled. The message hadn't been read, just sent. Whoever was texting had no idea I'd seen it already. Shut it down. What did that mean? Keep me quiet? Scare me? Remove me? I thought back to last night, Leela's panic, her refusal to call Mason, her saying, "You don't know what you're asking for." And now this. I slipped the flip phone back into my pocket and walked through the house slowly, scanning faces, looking for any sign that someone knew I was onto them. Everyone looked calm, too calm. I watched everyone at breakfast. Not the way you watch family, with half-listening ears and distracted affection. I watched them like suspects, like I'd walked into a room of strangers wearing familiar faces. The storm had cleared overnight. Sunlight was back, sharp and clean, pouring through the kitchen windows like it was trying to erase what the dark had stirred up. But it didn't touch the weight sitting in my chest. I sat at the table, bowl of cereal untouched, eyes moving from person to person. Dad was reading the paper, out loud like always. Something about local elections, his voice steady and too casual. His glasses sat crooked on his nose and he hadn't shaved. Normally that'd make me smile, now it made my skin crawl. Leela was across from me, still in Mason's hoodie, hair tied back in a loose knot. She stirred her coffee without sipping it, her spoon clinking the side of the mug in slow, rhythmic loops. Ezra was beside her, scrolling on his phone with one hand, eating with the other, occasionally nodding along to Dad's reading. Every now and then he'd glance at me, not long enough to say anything, just a flicker. Mom was at the stove, humming softly as she flipped pancakes like nothing had changed. Like her son wasn't missing and no one had thought to ask why, I kept my voice even. "Anyone hear from Mason yet?" No one looked up. Leela was the first to answer. "No, but I told you he's..." "Unplugging," I finished. "Right. That's what you said." Dad folded his paper slowly. "He'll call when he's ready." "When was the last time you spoke to him?" I asked. He blinked. "Few weeks ago." "Did he sound off?" "No more than usual." I nodded. Ezra didn't say anything. He took another bite, too fast, like he was trying to chew through tension. I leaned forward slightly. "Has anyone here actually seen him since he left town?" The table went quiet. Leela looked down. Mom turned from the stove. "Sweetheart, what are you getting at?" I shrugged. "Just seems strange. He disappears, no contact, and we're all pretending it's normal." Dad's mouth tightened. He's a grown man. He doesn't need permission to take space. I looked at Ezra again. He was already looking at me. Too directly. He knew something. Ezra took a call outside. It was barely 15 minutes after breakfast. The table was still half cleared, dishes stacked but not washed. Leela was in the den pretending to read again, though her eyes hadn't moved from the same page in 20 minutes. Mom had gone to lie down. Dad was back with his crossword. I watched Ezra step out onto the back deck with his phone pressed to his ear. He didn't announce the call, didn't look at anyone, just slid the screen door shut behind him like he needed air. I counted 10 seconds, then followed. I didn't step outside, just eased the door open enough to hear. His voice was low, tight. "She's getting close." Silence, I don't know, she found the phone. More silence, no, she hasn't figured out the site. That was it, the word site. Ezra paced near the edge of the porch. He had one hand on the railing, knuckles white. His voice dropped again. If she goes there, it's over. A pause, then quietly, we said it was done. He turned around, that's when he saw me. His eyes flared just for a second, then he hung up, fast, too fast, like a hand yanking a curtain closed. Who was that? I asked, stepping onto the porch like I hadn't just heard everything. He smiled. Too clean. Work. You don't work weekends. Client stuff, urgent. What's the site? His smile twitched. What? You said, what if she finds the site? What were you talking about? You were listening. I was standing right here. He didn't answer. I moved closer. Where is Mason, Ezra? He laughed once, short and sharp. You're being paranoid. I found the burner phone. I found the messages. Don't tell me I'm paranoid. His face changed then, like something inside him pulled back. You should let it go, Riley. I stepped back. You just admitted it. No, I didn't. You said. I said you should let it go. We stared at each other. The wind picked up again, brushing loose pine needles across the deck. For the first time in my life, I was afraid of my cousin. And I realized something else in that moment. Ezra hadn't asked once about Mason, not all week. I went into town, didn't tell anyone. Just slipped out after lunch while Leela was in the shower and Ezra was helping Dad pretend to fix a leak in the shed. Mom didn't notice. Or if she did, she didn't ask. I drove straight to Granger, 20 minutes east, the first real town with a cell tower, a gas station, and a friend of mine who owed me a favor. His name was Cam. We dated in college for a second. Stayed friends because he worked in telecom and never asked questions when I shouldn't be asking for help. I called him from the parking lot of a Baytan tackle shop. Need a trace, I said. Fast. He didn't even groan. Give me the number. I read off Mason's, the real one, his primary cell, the one no one had heard from in weeks. Cam ran it, took maybe 8 minutes. Last GPS ping was 21 days ago, he said. I leaned against the hood of my car. Where? He hesitated. You sitting. Just tell me. Coordinates hit near Route 17. That stretch between Dry Hollow and the old mining sites. I felt the back of my throat tighten. You're sure? Positive, right at the edge of the well site. Signal stopped after that. Phone went dead. What kind of well site? Old oil field. Shut down years ago, nothing active. Mostly just equipment left behind and some fenced-off shafts. Send me the map. He did. I stared at the satellite image, gray earth, rusted fencing, one narrow access road, and a square-shaped patch of disturbed soil near the far edge. Clean lines, too clean. Anyone living out there? I asked. Nope, just ghosts and coyotes. I hung up, drove straight there. It was quiet. Still, no birds, no wind, just dry heat pressing down like a warning. The road to the site was roped off with a sun-bleached sign that read environmental hazard do not enter. But the rope was sagging. The ground showed tire marks. I stepped over it and kept walking. The well wasn't open. It was filled. Fresh cement, smooth, poured recently, you could still see the swirl of the drying finish. And yellow tape, not crime scene tape, a different kind. Private property, closed by county order, but there was no record posted. No construction permit, no official investigation, just a sealed notice. I stood there, staring at the slab, and I knew. Whatever had happened to Mason, whatever he knew, whatever they buried, it was underneath my feet. I brought the phone to the police. Quietly. No warning, no conversation. I didn't even go home first. I drove straight to the Granger County Sheriff's Office and sat in the parking lot for 15 minutes before I could make my legs move. Inside, it was too bright. Fluorescent lights and beige walls, the kind of setting that makes even the truth feel like an overreaction. But I walked to the desk and said the words anyway. I need to report a missing person. My brother's. The deputy behind the glass looked up slowly. How long's he been missing? 3 weeks, maybe more. Have you filed a report yet? No. Why not? Because until 2 hours ago, I wasn't sure if I was crazy. Because my family is lying. Because no one else will say it. I didn't say any of that. Instead, I pulled the burner phone out of my pocket and slid it across the counter. I found this hidden in his room. You're going to want to read the messages. He hesitated, then took the phone, flipped it open, scrolled through the thread with that same casual slowness they teach in training videos. But I watched his jaw tighten. I didn't say much. I didn't have to, I just sat there while they copied everything, the texts, the number labeled Dad, the coordinates Cam had sent me. I went to the well site, I told the officer. It's been sealed, fresh cement, no construction record. But that's the last place his phone pinged. He didn't argue, he just nodded, then picked up the receiver on his desk. Get someone from CID. That's when I knew it had shifted. This wasn't family drama anymore. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a bad breakup or a brother who needed space. This was a case, and someone was about to start answering questions. They brought Leela in first. A plain cruiser pulled up to the cabin that evening. No lights, no sirens, no announcement. Just two detectives in windbreakers with clipped voices and unreadable faces. They asked to speak with Leela privately, said it was routine questioning, said it wouldn't take long. She didn't protest, didn't cry, didn't look at me. She just nodded and followed them into the cruiser like she already knew what they'd ask. Ezra stood behind the porch railing, arms crossed, jaw tight, watching like he couldn't decide if he should intervene or run. They came back for him 20 minutes later. By then, Leela hadn't returned. They asked the same way, polite but firm. Mind coming down with us to answer a few things? No threats. No cuffs. Ezra looked at me before he left. Not angry, not scared, just resigned. I watched the cruiser pull away, gravel kicking under its tires, taillights blinking as it curved down the dirt road out of sight. No one else said anything. Mom cleaned the same counter 3 times in a row. Dad pretended to read. I sat at the kitchen table with my phone face up, waiting for a call I wasn't sure I wanted to get. Leela didn't come back that night. Neither did Ezra. The cabin stayed too quiet, the kind of silence that presses in from the walls. I kept thinking about Mason's laugh, the way it used to echo through this place. Loud, sharp, always first to break the tension. Now there was nothing to break. I didn't sleep. I waited for the knock, waited for the phone to ring, waited for the truth. The well was filled with fresh cement and yellow police tape. I expected something overgrown and half-collapsed, the kind of forgotten place animals nested in. Instead, it looked new, intentional, like someone had come back here to clean up. The gate was still half-hinged, metal brittle with rust, but someone had propped a board across the opening. There was a laminated sign zip-tied to the fence. Environmental hazard, do not enter. Wrong font, wrong tone, no official seal. County warnings, don't laminate things. The cement was poured clean. No cracks, no moss, no weathering. It hadn't even settled all the way, the edges still held a curve, like a bowl filled too high. You could see the smoothing trowel marks along one corner. Fresh. I stepped around the edge and scanned the ground. No footprints, no tire tracks, just cement and silence. A warning without a voice. I didn't need one, because this was the place. Mason's phone had last pinged less than 100 yards from here. Cam's GPS overlay had shown the signal dead center. There were no other structures, no equipment, no tools, just this. Someone poured this slab to keep something in. I took a photo, then I walked the perimeter once, slow, wide steps, counting. The shape wasn't random, it was square, symmetrical. Someone cared about precision. There was no plaque, no county permit, no record nailed to a post. Just cement, and a silence thick enough to choke on. I stood there until my legs started to ache, until I felt like my skin couldn't hold my bones still. Then I turned around, walked back to my car, and drove straight to the sheriff's office. Not to ask, to report. I brought the phone to the police. Quietly. No drama, no announcement. I didn't even go home to change. Just drove straight from the well site with the burner phone wrapped in an old sock and Mason's name echoing in my head like a warning I'd almost missed. The Granger County Sheriff's Office sat behind a laundromat and an old bakery. Looked like a DMV from the outside. I parked facing the exit, just in case. Inside, the air was cold and wrong, overhead fluorescents buzzing. A framed American flag hung crooked behind the front desk. I waited in line behind a woman arguing about a parking ticket until the clerk finally looked at me. "I need to speak with a detective," I said. "What's this about?" "My brother's missing," I told her, "and I think someone in my family buried him." That got her attention. I sat in a side room with a paper cup of water and the burner phone on the table between us. Detective Rodriguez entered 5 minutes later. Mid-40s, plain clothes, watched me like he was trying to figure out if I was unwell or telling the truth. He asked me to walk him through it, so I did everything. Leela arriving alone, the texts, the GPS ping, the slab, Ezra's call on the porch, the fake construction sign, the cement that hadn't hardened fully. I gave him names, dates, the printed emails. The number labeled Dad. I showed him the message. "Don't let her find out what we buried." He didn't speak for a while. Then he took out a notepad and asked me to repeat everything again, slower this time. I did. By the end, he wasn't watching me like I might be crazy anymore. He was watching me like I'd handed him a shovel. And now we were both standing at the edge of something buried. They brought Leela in first. A cruiser pulled up to the cabin just after noon. No lights, no sirens, just the crunch of tires over gravel and the long silence of intention. Leela was out back, sitting in one of the folding chairs near the fire pit. I saw her turn her head as the car door opened. She didn't flinch, didn't ask who it was for. She already knew. Detective Rodriguez stepped out first. Another officer followed with a notepad and a small black recording device. No cuffs. No warning, Leela Camden. She stood, didn't argue, didn't call for me. She just walked across the yard and got in the backseat like she was late for something and didn't want to be rude. They didn't ask for anyone else. Not yet. Ezra came out 5 minutes later. Wiped his hands on a towel like he'd just come from fixing something that didn't need fixing. He saw the car. Then he saw me watching him from the screen door. He didn't ask. I didn't wave. That night, Leela didn't come back. Ezra didn't say a word. Neither did my parents. Mom made grilled cheese. Dad watched a game he didn't understand. Everyone sat in their places like the empty chair at the table was some unspoken tradition. But the silence had shifted. It wasn't denial anymore. It was dread. And I kept thinking, if Leela went quiet this easily, what will Ezra do when they start digging? The flip phone buzzed at 12:47 am. I was alone. Couldn't sleep. Couldn't stop replaying the sound of Leela's voice when she said nothing at all. The message flashed on the screen, blue-white and too bright in the dark. "You should have let it go." No punctuation, just clean and cold. I stared at it for a full minute before flipping the phone shut. Then I opened it again. Another buzz. "He's not your problem anymore." Another, "If you tell them everything, you'll regret it." I didn't move, didn't breathe. Just let the messages stack. I knew whose number was listed as the sender, still saved as Dad. But Dad was asleep across the hall, breathing like nothing had changed. He didn't own a burner, barely knew how to use a GPS. Whoever sent those messages was still out there, still watching, still close enough to know I hadn't stopped. I took photos of the screen, backed up the data, emailed it to myself twice. I wasn't scared, not in the way they wanted me to be, because this didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a last attempt, a crack in whatever was left of their plan, a desperate hand trying to shove the dirt back over a grave I'd already uncovered. I stayed up the rest of the night. Didn't lock the door, didn't sleep, just waited. They found him under the cement, not the whole of him, not enough to pretend he was just gone too long, but enough to confirm what I already knew the moment I read the message on that phone. He never left, they buried him. It took days to break through the slab. Hazmat suits, ground-penetrating radar, forensic techs who never looked me in the eye. Rodriguez called when they pulled the first piece of fabric, Mason's hoodie, still mostly intact, sealed under concrete and airless dark. Dental records confirmed it a week later. That's when the headlines changed. Ezra stopped answering questions. Leela pled to obstruction. 2 more names came out from her depositions, a guy from Ezra's job. Another tied to the truck used to pour the cement. They had help. They didn't act alone. It was enough for the DA to push charges. And it was enough for me to sit in a courtroom, raise my right hand, and say every name out loud. Under oath, under pressure, under light too bright to hide in, I testified, then I left. I didn't wait for sentencing. Didn't care what kind of numbers they'd serve. It wouldn't give me Mason back, but I made sure someone would get justice. And someone would carry what he was, not the silence they tried to replace him with. I changed my number after that, burned the phone, moved cities, told no one, but I still have the photo of the message. I still know the number. And I'll never forget what it cost me to bring him home. Thank you for watching. Please do not forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. I love you all.